This is a production of Cornell University.
Say hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lucia Viñale. I'm organizing this 4th edition of our hemp webinar series. This year, we have decided to focus on hemp grain. We have 8 amazing speakers who have kindly agreed to give talks on various topics. We are kicking it off with Morgan Tweed from IND Hemp and a member of the Hemp Food Coalition who is here with us today. Since this is our first webinar of this year, I'd like to briefly explain how it will work. We're going to start at 1 p.m. EST, allow participants to join, and once attendance stabilizes, I'll introduce the speaker. The presentation would last approximately 45 minutes, and we are going to follow it by a 15 minutes Q&A session. Then we'll wrap up by thanking the speaker and for their time and insights. So please submit your questions for the speaker using the Q&A button and use the chat for any other communication. The webinars will be recorded and uploaded to our School of Integrative Plant Science YouTube channel, SIP's YouTube channel. So if you have to leave early or you want to watch it again, you can just go to YouTube and you'll find the talks from this year and the talks from the past editions of the webinar. And without further ado, I'll have the honor of introducing today's speaker, Morgan Tweed. Morgan is a founding partner of IND Hemp, a Montana-based hemp food and fiber company located in Fort Benton. She is the chief executive officer and has helped design, construct, commission, and operate one of the largest hemp processing campuses in the U.S. with their oilseed and fiber facilities. Morgan graduated from the University of Missouri with a bachelor's in chemical engineer and then worked for Archer Daniels Midland in Decatur, Illinois, launching her career in agriculture and food processing. Morgan and her father, Ken Elliott, founded IND Hemp with the mission to create new and rewarding opportunities for rural agriculture communities and companies that see the great opportunity in hemp grain and fiber. They believe in the goodness of hemp and its ability to not only bring another revenue source to the farm, but also believe in its power as a strong rotation crop combating persistent weeds and helping build soil health. So, Morgan, it's all yours.
Thank you. Well, I'm very honored to be here today. I know we're on a short clock, so I'll jump right into it. But really appreciate the opportunity to be invited to participate in the webinar and excited for the series ahead. Hopefully, I set the stage for some other great speakers that I saw listed there. I think there'll be some really good content, and this will just be a bit of a scratch of the surface that they can follow up with more detail. So Cornell asked that I sort of go into a little bit of IND Hemp as a business and our capabilities, what we do. And then we're going to focus on grain production and sort of end with food and feed opportunities. I am the executive director of the Hemp Food Coalition as well. So personal passion and a lot of good work that's been done by the people there also. First off, a little bit about IND Hemp. So we are a certified B Corp organization. This is our town of Fort Benton. It's located about 45 minutes northeast of Great Falls. If you know Montana, we're north central. We're in a really productive agricultural region. A lot of grain is grown around here. The major rotation crops that we're working with are winter wheat, spring wheat, pulses, some forage production as well. And we've just been really thankful and blessed to be in this community that's really embraced us. There's about 1,500 people. We're right along the Missouri River here, so very historic and beautiful town. If you are a big fan of Lewis and Clark, I encourage you to come out and visit. We've got a rich history there, and it's just a great community to be in. So I highlight that we're certified B Corp because it really articulates well our business and our values. You know, we sort of communicate success with our people, our planet, and our profit. And so we want to focus on those things in that order. And I think that's really boded well for us and the success that we've had. We were established in 2018. My dad's been doing hemp though since about 2013. He's got the first license in Montana all the way back to the 2014 Farm Bill and has been working it. And then I left my career with ADM. And as crazy of an adventure as it started, it sort of really took effect after the Farm Bill passed in December of 2018. We started in grain manufacturing and then quickly evolved into fiber as well. So just a few photos of our people and the work we're doing in our facilities. They mean a lot to us. That's what encourages and inspires me every day, and just hope to do a good job for them. Our mission and our vision, I'm not going to read it in its entirety. You can definitely come onto our website, but I think it does a great job of articulating what we see and what we want to do. The things I like to highlight is that, we really want to create value in the supply chain. It's a very clear need that we have as an industry, is continuing to focus on the right steps in the process. And we want to do it with integrity and really focus on those things. So like I said, focusing on the relationship with the farmer, making sure that they're not getting the last cut, but their needs and their integration is considered at the forefront. And then obviously really championing the opportunity to work with pioneers of different entrepreneurial businesses that see hemp as a real opportunity to create lasting change, whether it's as a material or a food or feed ingredient. It really starts on the farm. We're going to go into quite a bit of agronomy stuff. I know that you guys have some other sessions to be even more focused on that, but back to our mission, this is why it started for us. We wanted to create value in rural Montana, and we wanted to see a new rotation crop that could bring revenue to our friends and family that were just having a hard time with the price of wheat every year. And so it's been really fun to see, starting with grain and then working with fiber genetics as well. They're two very different production models. We're going to focus on grain today, but we've learned a lot in the 6+ years that we've been doing production, and really understand the value and importance of focusing on the farm first. This is our footprint. It needs to be updated a little bit, but generally speaks to sort of where we're at on the presence. Montana is definitely an ag state, and a lot of value manufacturing has also brought our economy up. And so what you see here in the stars are our facility in Fort Benton, which is where all of our manufacturing is done, and then our main corporate office. And then we have an office in Belgrade as well, which serves as a warehouse. And then a lot of our sales and finance team is located there also. And then you can see all of our partner farms. This has been updated for a few years, so there's more than that. But as you can see, we're pretty diverse. Montana is a really big state. We have to cover a lot of territory. We've actually done some production in Canada as well. We've done some seed production also in the Midwest, Kansas, Texas, Indiana. So we've sort of have a good pulse on generally what genetics works in what regions, but been hyper focused on trying to optimize yields and efficiencies in our region as well. We really focus on that grower relationship. We've to date had about 30,000 acres that we've managed. We don't personally grow, but we work with farmers and contract with them. And that's the production model that you see with most commodities, but it's worked well for us. Focusing on family farms, we'd like to stay within 400-mile radius. Closer is better. 100 miles would be awesome, but the reality is we have to, go where the acres are, and being geographically diverse also helps us mitigate some risk. So we do have a full-time agronomist on staff. We do also usually have a seasonal intern that will help as well. So we're there from, everything from seed selection to when they're planting and doing seed counts and stand counts throughout the season, helping them with their nutrition program. So it's a very hands-on relationship. And so we get feedback from them throughout the year as well. Everything from, seed and fiber storage to transportation and material handling needs. We are the licensee of X59, which is a variety based out of Canada. It's worked really well for us. And then we're also the owner of IH Williams, which is a high yielding fiber variety. It's also known as SS Beta in a lot of university trials. So maybe you have heard of both of those varieties. And we've seen success in our region in both, and then have continued to keep an eye on and trial a lot of other varieties as well. Our goal is always to provide the best variety for our farmers to maximize their yields and meeting the quality specs that we need as a processor as well. So really the buckets of products that we make sort of fall either into hemp food, hemp feed, or hemp fiber. We're not going to talk a whole lot about hemp fiber, but we do have a decortication facility. And so those products that we're going to be selling is bast fiber, cleaned and sized herd, and then some co-products. And so the general number, I think that's nice to articulate to folks, is between our facilities, we can manage somewhere between 20 and 30,000 acres of hemp. Really depends on what that production mix looks like in terms of dual purpose or single purpose production. But I say that just sort of in the grand scheme of things. We're one of the largest processors in the United States, and 10 to 30,000 acres is not even a drop in the bucket for most commodities. And so it's definitely an industry that has a lot of room to grow and a lot of room for other processors to get onboarded. I know generally farmers are definitely interested in hemp. They're looking for a new cash crop or something at least competitive. And then they're also looking for something that adds value to their rotation, to their soils. So we'll dig into that a little bit more as well. This is a quick look of our facilities. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail on our production. We can definitely cover questions, but was asked to sort of do some other things. But both of these locations are in Fort Benton. They're about, not even half mile away from one another. On the left is our fiber facility. You can see the raw straw bales that are outside. We usually try to keep about a month's worth of inventory on hand. And then on the right is our oilseeds facility. So we have seed cleaning and then seed processing in 2 separate buildings with some on-site storage as well. We do have the menu of certifications that we're really proud of and we work hard for. We had our annual organic audit yesterday that went over really well. We've just been blessed with a great quality team and a production team that continue to hold us up to these high standards, and we are confident with what we communicate to customers for both of our businesses. Some brands, just because we've continued to garner more value in the supply chain, and so going further down the value chain has helped us to continue to get that value. The products that we sell, mostly fiber related, are Allwax and Hemptana. We start with bedding products, but then we're have the opportunity to also highlight our supplement and feed products with oil seeds. So those are 2 animal care products. One's more targeted to a smaller animal versus a farm and ranch style animal. Then we have our Montana Gold, which is represented both in sort of lawn and garden. And then we've also been successful in converting it into textile and been working with some smaller brands to launch our Montana Gold into some finished apparel products. And then our IH oilseed products, most of our our food is being sold in bulk. We don't have currently a retail facing brand, but continue to support other brands both domestically and internationally. Current applications that you sort of see us in, a lot of this is fiber, just since it's a more diverse sectors that it can sort of play in, but we see nonwovens and composites as a big opportunity for us: absorption, textiles, soil amendments, human and animal nutrition. So this was a picture taken at Ag on the Mall. We're partners with the National Hemp Association. They did a great setup in DC, and it was nice to showcase some of our products along with some other well-known hemp processors in the US. So we'll jump into grain production. So sort of the agenda: basic cultivation knowledge, what we've learned, what we need to continue investigating, some harvesting, grain handling, and then product development and challenges. So there's a lot of information on this slide. This is sort of the basic management practices. It is, kind of where we start with a lot of our growers. I'll make sure that these slides are available to share so you guys don't feel like you have to, frantically write notes. Some of the things I think are important to highlight, it can be used either in conventional tillage or no-till. Most of the production in our area is no-till, and so we've seen that be really successful. The probably highest risk, like most crops, but planting is where we can really either make or break the season. So it's important to get the right depth and spacing. Timing, it definitely is more flexible than I would say some other crops. You can go as early as late April to early June. We've seen pros and cons to both. Sort of looking at the production of what you need. If you're trying to mitigate weed pressure, that's your number one concern. Maybe planting earlier to try to get the crop established earlier. If you're trying to chase moisture, maybe looking at the forecast a little bit more. It is fairly frost resistant. I would say trying to target that 50 degrees soil temperature though is probably the best time to look at planting. Planting density is definitely a big thing to sort of work with whoever you're working with production wise, because that is what we see play the biggest role. Definitely depending on if you're growing for fiber or grain purposes. For seed production, I would say targeting 200 to 300 plants per acre, 300,000 plants per acre is a good place to start. It'll depend on your variety. The seed size in hemp across varieties is very different. Some are nice round plump seeds that their bushel weight's going to be different than some of these really smaller seeds. So I think working with your processor who's going to be purchasing the commodity is probably the most important thing to understand that. And then working with the whoever owns the variety to give that sort of insight into your pounds per acre planted. On the right, I sort of outlined our growth cycles of what we see. You definitely have most of the varieties are dioecious, so you have male and female plants coming up. This sort of outlines when you'll see the males start showing those reproductive organs first, when you'll start to see pollen drop, and then when those seeds start to really fill out. I think one of the challenging things that we see every year, and it's sort of the risk that farmers take, is around harvest. A lot of variables come into play. Because it is an indeterminate plant, meaning it'll just continue to put on seeds until something kills the plant. You'll see nice, mature, large seeds at the bottom of the seed head, and then you'll see small, immature green seeds at the top that really have no value. And so that's sort of a thing that farmers have to evaluate when they're looking at maximizing yield, is when to cut. So a lot of things, I think every year our growers get more confident in their decisions. Obviously, Mother Nature has a pretty big role to play. For us, moisture is what we're chasing most of the time if we're on dryland acres. We have had a lot of success on irrigated acres. But just for reference, in our region, we're working with 10 to 12 inches of annual precip. Out in like Pennsylvania and New York, you guys are probably somewhere between like 35 and 50 inches. So big difference in moisture needs. I think everyone thinks hemp can do all things with limited resources. And it is always surprising what it is resilient to. But just like most things green, it wants water and it wants nutrition. Here are some biofactors and sort of what we've learned. Hemp definitely allows for very biodiverse soils. It's bringing new organisms in. It's helping promote that activity. So we've definitely seen some value there on the soil side. You do see some competition with weeds early on. And so there are a few chemistries that have been successful. I sort of outlined them on the side there. This is for our region, so I can't speak to what everyone will have access to or see success with, but I did think it was important to throw this on here. We're big fans of regenerative agricultural practices. We promote that a lot. We also do organic production. So, we take a full holistic approach. We think hemp is an awesome crop to revitalize agriculture in general. And because of its ability to be more resilient, its its reduced needs and inputs, and then what it does at the soil level, we think that there's a lot of things that can be used in a transition program for those farmers who are looking to either go organic or go regenerative. But the reality is like conventional practices are still very much needed for a lot of folks. And so we try to just fit all applications and all operations. So for weeds, if you can get the crop out of the ground and well established, we see a lot of competition happen throughout the year, and hemp usually wins out there with its canopy closure. Some pests to be aware of: there are definitely some aphids, grasshoppers, caterpillars, spider mites. I know there's probably more in other regions, but generally because of some of those terpenes and cannabinoids, we think that there's some natural repellents that are there. For us, the most devastating pest is caterpillars, or excuse me, sorry, most devastating pest is grasshoppers. And that's more due to hemp is the last thing that guys harvest around here. And so grasshoppers are going to be looking for moisture. And so as the wheat is cut and other pulse crops are cut, they sort of go to the last green thing out there, which almost always ends up being hemp. So we've definitely had our years 2020 through 2022 are pretty rough. Still don't have a great solution for that, but generally speaking, that's about all the pest pressure we see. Definitely see that pollinators like it, especially when those males are out. It's amazing. You can walk through the fields and just see all the bees there. So we know that's a great thing for your ecosystems as well. And then some diseases to be aware of, variety dependent. We see some of those terpenes also playing a role, I think, and definitely the structure of the seed head. So some of those grain varieties have tighter seed heads that hold on to moisture a little bit more, don't allow for that seed to breathe. And so sometimes we can have some mildew or mold. We don't have that a lot in our region, but we definitely know of it in other places as well. I think some of the things to learn to sort of highlight, it definitely is region specific. And I mean, that's not a shocker there. We see that for every other commodity or crop we're growing. But it is important to highlight that, hemp is behind, obviously, by several decades. And when you look at the germplasms available and the breeding programs that have been successful, hemp just has a long way ahead of it. I think there's some fantastic companies out there doing great work, making headway both in hybrid opportunities and such. But we really need to see that increase, both in just the varieties that are available to increase yield, but region-specific varieties as well. I think understanding, what are the important traits you're looking for, whether it's maturity due to like harvest timing or plant height, seed head architecture. Those are all things to keep in mind when choosing variety. And then it also is really important to talk about what you're planning to do for harvest, because that'll play a role in what you want, those traits. Mostly plant height, I think, is really the big thing to determine there. But these are all things to consider. I was asked to share sort of what varieties we've grown, and so I've thrown up these. I'm sure I'm missing a couple, but we try to do a good job of having a commercial scale plot trials out every year. So the last year and this year, we've had about 120 acres that we divvy up between 10 and 20 acre plots. It's great to work with universities to get those those plot trials that are a half acre or less, but really rubber meets the road when you start seeing these commercial size trials and seeing how these varieties perform under the same conditions, same soil type, things like that. So I'm happy to give some insight for our area on these varieties if people are looking for that. We always try to have an open book, open door policy, and try to be as collaborative as possible. Grain harvest, storage, and handling is really, really important. I'd say, if not more important than that planting risk. You can have a beautiful crop and really excited about your season, and you can ruin it in one day in just a couple hours if you don't handle it well. So first off, you're going to be, cutting it either with like a draper header or, just a classic combine. You could swath it as well, and then come back with combine header. Harvest it. I think the biggest thing to focus on there are your settings and your combine to clean the seed. We definitely know that it is, high forward material because of that indeterminate nature. You're going to be harvesting really great, dry, beautiful seeds, but you're also going to be bringing in a lot of trash with both the bracts and the leaves, and then all those immature seeds as well, which hold on to moisture. Moisture is not your friend in this case, because that's where we see mold and other issues. So we talked to our farmers about using augers. It is fragile seed. So similar to peas or other things, you can use an auger, you just need to go slow. Since seeds will crack, and then that's a quality concern, because of its high oil content, it's going to want to go rancid pretty quick. Bin storage is really important to have set up ahead of harvest too, making sure you have aeration. We are fortunate enough here in our region that most of the time we don't need heaters. Our relative humidity is manageable. I do know in other areas though, if you don't have, relative humidity in your favor, need to make sure that you have a heater on there to keep that moisture out. Being careful to keep those temperatures down, just has that low flash point. So I definitely think we can give some insight there as well. Good rule of thumb is making sure that if you're harvesting above 10% moisture, you need to get your grain on air within 4 hours. And that's sort of a non-negotiable. So making sure you have that plan. Some guys don't have that access or are challenged with things. And so they'll actually choose to harvest, either swath it and let it dry in the field or harvest it at much drier conditions. Those risk is you have shatter and other, bird pressure, things like that. You can lose some yield if you wait for that. But fundamentally, if you don't have a way to dry your grain, you sort of don't have an option. You have to cut it at low moistures. And then turning over your bin and making sure you're keeping an eye on it for spoilage is really important. This is a raw food, and so we need to be careful and cognizant of your truck and trailer. We do truck affidavits with our growers, so making sure they get into the hoppers and make sure everything's cleaned up. Like I said, hemp's usually the last thing they harvest, and so we're following something else, whether it's wheat or peas or something else. Hemp typically is allergen free, and so it's important for us to try to keep that at the farm level. Our biggest risk is wheat. It is also considered generally gluten free, so making sure we get all those wheat kernels out is really important. Just want to, when I talked about hemp as an opportunity for more sustainable agricultural practices, I think it's sort of, this is the 4 points I like to highlight. Generally, we see overall lower inputs, everything from herbicides and pesticides, even to, water usage. A lot of people are really excited about hemp when we look at, some of these aquifers drying up and other things. Hemp definitely has a role to play. And I think that the more we get a handle on what its needs are and what our production expectations are, and then the economies that survive for those costing models is really important also. We definitely know hemp is great at sequestering carbon. It's very fast growing, and we know that there's a lot of biomass on the field, especially when we're growing for fiber. We've been working with a group to be able to articulate our carbon sequestration numbers. And then we also articulate that in our LCAs with our products. So we think there's a role to play in the fight against climate as well. Definitely hemp improves some biodiversity. We're bringing in, a new soil structure with, a new root structure that definitely helps with the soil. We see other pollinators and other things coming and really helping build up a resilient ecosystem for the soil. I think everyone in the last decade in agriculture has realized how important it is to focus on soil health. Everything from adopting no-till practices or minimal till practices to, how we can increase biologics in the soil. It's really important, and I think hemp's a great crop to help complement those practices. And then generally, it's a minimal waste product. What's awesome is even when you're growing for grain, you can really model that dual crop scenario where we can harvest for both the grain and seed head, but also for that residual fiber and bring value. And we're finding more and more valuable homes for these co-products. And so that's exciting to see for an industry that only has, half a decade under its belt here in the US, to continue to see value opportunities for these byproducts. So we'll talk about food and feed. So we did a market survey last year to sort of get a feel and help point us in our direction where we want to go with food. And I thought this was really encouraging. So this was one of the slides I took from, how currently consumers are looking at hemp. And it's nice to see that, we're almost at the 50th percentile for consumers that are already using these ingredients in their diet. And so more room to grow, but, it's a lack of perception that everyone still thinks that we're an intoxicating product. Clearly, about 50% of people are eating it in some form or fashion. So I think we've made progress in the last decade. I did take this slide from Sam Garfinkel. He's the marketing officer with Tilray and Manitoba Harvest. So I'm going to give him appropriate credit. But I thought it was a really good slide to showcase, from a food perspective, where we're seeing hemp sort of grow. They have a wonderful brand that they've really grown and invested in. It's been legal in Canada about 2 decades more than it is here. And so they've got a little bit of a head start on us, and they've done a great job of incorporating hemp food into store shelves and then the consumer basis. Nutritionally, sort of what we have, and a little bit of beyond the basics, but what we're generally speaking of from the macronutrients is 20 to 30% carbohydrates, 10 to 15% of that being insoluble fiber, somewhere between 25 and 35% oil, and 20 to 25% protein. We have seen this, fluctuate a little bit from varieties, but this is some good standards. It is a really unique, complete protein, meaning it has all those 9 essential amino acids, but it's also, encouraging as the increased bioavailability, so what we can digest. This protein composition also is pretty unique. So that that graph on the right there is showing those amino acids, and it's comparing it to other proteins that we probably complement in the food space. So pea protein, soy protein, fava bean protein. I think albumin and edison are probably the most exciting ones that we see pretty unique for hemp. And I think food formulators are continuing to focus on those things to highlight that, the consumer basis is obviously growing in its consumer awareness of the value of protein in its diets. And so we're sort of poised to be able to take advantage of that and think hemp has a role to play. It's also still a good source of those plant-based polyunsaturated fats. We talked about hemp's unique omega fatty acid profile, that 6:3 ratio, really ideal for absorption and metabolism. We see that value proposition also showing up in feed applications. We talked about the allergens, which is always good to have an ingredient that we don't have to worry about that. And there's also meaningful mineral, micronutrient, and anti-nutrient properties as hemp as well. I sort of highlighted, where I think a potential, my background working with ADM, I saw a lot of growth in protein isolates and protein concentrates. And so I think as we talk about the value proposition hemp has with protein, we can't miss talking about isolates and concentrates as well. It definitely is a challenge, and there's been some great processors that have been working on this. I've listed a few here. I know that others are working on it, but it's conceptually just trying to isolate those proteins or concentrate up those proteins to put it in a form that can be used more as an ingredient versus a finished product. So I don't think everyone fully appreciates how much soy protein is in the U.S. consumer's diet, mostly because we don't see it or we don't always look at it in the ingredient list, but it's in a lot of things. So there's a huge market base there for us. We do know that we complement pea protein and in the amino acid profiles. And so can we create an ingredient and put it in for a functional form that allows us to get on the back of more labels? So some examples of success you might have heard, Elmhurst has done like Terra Meat. They've done creamers and sour cream alternatives. Nepra has done some meat and egg replacement. Planet-based food has done some ice cream and other milk replacements. So I think there's a lot of great companies that are trying to break into that consumer space. And we're all excited and supportive of that, because we generally all want the same thing. We want more people consuming hemp food. So talk about feed real quick. We didn't go into a lot of the processing, but hopefully most people generally know the basic processing for grain. You get clean seed in. You can either run it through a press for mechanical extraction, and you get hemp seed oil and hemp cake or meal as a byproduct, or you run it through a hulling systems to retrieve that healthy hemp heart, and then your hemp hulls are your co-products. And in both scenarios, those co-products right now don't have a lot of applications in human food. And so it's really important for us to be looking at alternative valuable markets. That's not uncommon, right? Most crops and commodities have this same problem where not everything can go into the food market. And so having the access to the feed market is really important for growth of any commodity. What does the feed consumption generally look like? So this is, sort of what is the animal feed diet sort of consisting of right now. I circled soybean meal and canola meal because that's where I think we can compete. And so it's not insignificant. We're definitely not chasing corn. And so I like to remind people, like, we're not here to compete against corn and soy. This isn't us trying to take the big bad boys out, but how can we complement the existing feed chain and sort of find other value propositions? We don't have a huge market in terms of process capabilities. We don't have the infrastructure to really compete on those volumes anyways, but we need to start working towards that. This is just sort of a snapshot of, how many tons of product we're talking. So back to my comment of, we're really not in a space as an industry right now to service any of these markets right now today by ourselves anyways. So we want to position ourselves as a complementary ingredient, whether it's from a nutritional perspective or a pricing perspective, but making sure that, people are very aware and demanding for higher quality protein sources. Hemp can check that box. There's an increased awareness of fatty acid profiles and what it does for gut health and, just the animal overall health. So hemp can check that box too. And then we have renewable resources, wool and hair is one that's talked about here for some other things, but hemp, with what we can do with the fiber, the residual fiber, also helps offset some of those impacts as well. So the Hemp Feed Coalition is a mission-driven company. It's 501c3, sorry, not company, but organization. A lot of great members on there. I want to highlight the great work that they did. We achieved the first successful application for an AAFCO ingredient definition. For those who are not aware, the FDA has two arms, a human food arm, and then an animal feed arm. They've been working with state regulators and AAFCO, and there's more restrictions on animal feed than there are human food, mostly because this is people's livelihood, their livestock, it's how they make a living. And also animals don't really have a choice what they eat. A lot of times, species will eat the same thing every day, all day for their whole life. And so there needs to be a lot of scrutiny and thought put into their nutrition to make sure we're putting them in the best position possible to be successful. So that's why it was a pretty lengthy process. It took us about 3.5 years, close to $300,000. We will be listed as an official ingredient in the next OP. There's one more vote in August, but we've passed the last 5. We've got one more to go. There are states that are recognizing the tentative ingredient definition right now. It did require us that we completed 2 different large-scale feed studies. We had to establish and defend a method for cannabinoid analysis, and then we had to recommend contaminant levels for cannabinoids as well. But huge milestone for the industry. I did want to highlight the laying hen study because one is the only ingredient improved, but also just the great things that we see from hemp and why laying hens are a target species for us. So here's sort of a breakdown of hemp seed cake versus other feed ingredients. You can sort of see the highlights from an amino acid level. This is the fatty acid profile. So we talk about that omega-6 to 3 ratio, which is so important for metabolism and for inflammation responses. So you can see, very competitive there. And then the awesome thing is that same correlation we saw in the eggs. And so you can see those numbers going down as the percent of hemp seed cake concentrate was introduced into the laying hen. You see that omega ratio going down. So on the bottom there is sort of talking about dietary health. I took these slides from Dr. Raj Kasula. He's one of our HFC board members. He was the chief scientist on this study. And so give him all the credit for the work that they did there with Wenger Feeds. Happy to share more, but it's encouraging to see that value proposition that we see in the ingredient translated into the egg as well. And then another surprising benefit we also see was an increase in lutein content, which we should care about. Lutein is a critical compound that we see playing a role with eye health. And so if we can also bring that value proposition to the eggs, I think consumers will be excited about that. So generally, this is sort of like the matrix of why we think hemp seed meal has such a great potential as a feed ingredient. We looked at the nutrient profile and the anti-nutritional factors. We had to assess safety, its palatability. We had to check for health and welfare, making sure that there wasn't any concerns there. Sourcing, processing, availability, and economics are all things we're working on, right, as an industry, because we're still pretty small. We don't necessarily have the economies of scale to compete, and may not have the availability that some of these, production hen houses are looking for. But those are all things that I think just we continue to chip away at as the industry grows. And it was a huge ability for us to get that AFCO approval, right? We really couldn't start opening these doors until that happened. So that happened in August of 2024. Again, some states recognize it, some haven't. So we really even sort of just have a foot in the door right now. I think once that vote happens this coming August, that will be wide open for folks. So want to highlight becoming an HFC member. HFC's goal is to get more applications submitted. This is how we open up more markets domestically. So sort of the breakdown of membership. We do have a great value proposition in our member zone. We sort of correlate and combine all of the research studies that are out there, and we provide an executive summary, quick access on our member zone online. So if you want to research, you want to say, hey, I want to look at, what research is out there for hemp hulls with swine, we'll pull that together for you and have an executive summary and then access to any publications that might be out there. So it's always a work in progress. Fundamentally, all of our funding goes to supporting research. We've written grants. We've been, included on other feed opportunities. You guys are going to hear from a couple folks later in other webinars about studies that are going on. And then we have to prepare the applications, which, takes time and is taken, sometimes even takes a consultant to do some safety studies for us. And so all that takes time and energy and money, but it's so critical for the growth of the industry. I really can't highlight that enough, just to be able to have those markets available to us. So please let me know if you're interested. We'd love to have you in participating as HFC member. So I think I gave us 15 minutes for questions. I never know what people want to hear, but you guys can obviously reach out to me, and then happy to take questions now as well. So. All right, got a few. One question is, what has been your farmer's experience with no-till? We've done really well with no-till up here. Obviously, having the right equipment is really imperative. So a lot of our guys out here, have different types of hoe drills or other drills that work with it. That seed to soil contact is really important. Sometimes we'll have uneven emergence in the furrow if that isn't managed well. If you have too much residual from the last crop or things like that. But generally speaking, we definitely have success with no-till operations. Hopefully that answered that. Recommendations for how to deal with bird pressure. It's a great question. Generally speaking, I think people say when the birds are there, it's time to harvest. There's, a few creative solutions that some farmers have come up with like scarecrows and like fire cannons and stuff. I don't know if I would say there's a silver bullet out there. Hemp definitely attracts birds. So for any of, avid bird hunters, I always say it's a great crop to put in. You'll see doves in there, pheasants, things like that. It's more challenging in regions that are surrounded by, shrubs or trees. I've been to New Zealand and some other places, the UK. You guys have more sort of paddocks that are surrounded by these trees that are full of birds. We're fortunate here, we're just the, big old Montana sky. We don't have that. We'll have, thousands of acres at a time without any sort of interruption. And so bird pressure is a little bit different. So unfortunately, I don't have an answer, but generally, if you can get in and harvest, that's the best way to get the birds out. So the leftover plant material after we harvest the seed head, the question is, what does IND Hemp do with that? Most of the time, we do let it ret. Retting is a really important aspect. That's a whole nother conversation for fiber, but generally we want to see that plant start to break. Did I get cut off? Okay, am I back?
Yes.
All right. Well, I guess I'll just keep going. But so back to the leftover. Yeah, we do. We will purchase that residual straw from growers and then run it through our decortication facility. It's almost strictly straw material, so that's that bast fiber and hurd. We don't have any leaf material left. It's all usually by then it's dried up and broken down in the field, and so it's strictly that that stock material. A great question. We'd love to partner with more researchers. The key is just starting the relationship with FDA, CBM, and AFCO early on. And so for like our ruminant application, we're going through a pre-submission process where we basically pull together all existing published research, review it with them, and then identify any gaps in the research. So for example, with the laying hen study, there was definitely research that was published outside of the United States. That was good research talking about palatability and nutritional opportunities, but none of the studies had really dove into the potential cannabinoid transference into the eggs, and that was FDA's main concern. And so we had to work with a private research group with the Wenger Feed Company, and tailored that feed study to answer that question specifically. So I think that anything is great and we get to start, but working with HFC early on and sort of mapping out what research objectives haven't been addressed yet is the best place to start. And then hopefully we can design a protocol to meet those things for an application. Question about developing single variety for both seed and fiber. I don't quite know what the question is, but there definitely are varieties out there that, tout that they're both a true dual crop, which I don't necessarily disagree with. But what we tell our farmers is if you're growing for seed, that is your primary harvested material. It takes the most care and attention. Your fiber residual is your byproduct. And when you just look at the economics of it, it's a no-brainer. You're going to get 90% of your revenue off of the seed harvested, not the fiber. And so a true dual crop model, yes, it can be done and varieties are doing it, but we always tell them to focus first on the seed. That's the higher value crop. That's what needs more attention to detail, and making sure it fits your operation. We definitely collaborate with academic researchers and universities. We're always open. Off the cuff, we're part of the FAR consortiums. That's Cornell, University of Kentucky, NC State. We do work with Montana State here, and then a handful of others. I'm always super excited to hear what people are going on. I definitely don't have a pulse on everything. And so if you guys want to work with us, or from agronomy to food and feed, we would love to participate and know more about what's going on. Question about stinger listed on work, what not to follow. I will try to pull up my herbicides list real quick so I can make sure I'm telling you the right thing. So stinger is a burn down that's used for broadleaf here in our region. And so we know that it works. We just know that it's not labeled for hemp to follow. Spartan Charge is another one that is on the other side, as we know, is a really effective herbicide for a lot of broadleafs, but there is carryover issues. And so we follow the label, very similar to canola and some other, broadleafs out here in oilseeds. We'll follow their recommendations for plant back periods and stuff like that. And I am not our agronomist, so if you want to talk to our agronomist, I will put you in contact with him. He definitely knows far more about what chemistries we use and don't use and those sort of things. Anticipate approval for livestock. We definitely are still, I would say, 18 to 24 months out for getting approval. We're trying to do some more creative applications to see if we can group more species together. So this ruminant application will be large and small ruminants. We're waiting on some key data to be analyzed from a lamb study that Colorado State University did a few years ago. But that's sort of the last step for information before we finish that application. Question about if we're developing construction materials for hemp in the future. We definitely, support right now one of the larger material construction companies in the U.S. that are doing a batten insulation replacement. That's where a lot of our bast fiber is going to applications like that. I definitely see an opportunity and hope. We're active in ASTM and other things that are looking at hempcrete and the materials that are used there. I'm naturally a little more just measured in my optimism as far as timing. Construction is challenging. There's so many regulations and approvals that you need, and you need to obviously prove its efficacy. We don't want to put people in houses that aren't made to last and withstand. So I think it's a great place for us to focus and continue to spend research dollars. And there's some great companies that we partner with, and it could be a real game changer for hemp as a material. So, all right, I think I covered all the questions in the Q&A. I hope. Other than diesel tractors, which parts of the business precious use the most energy? Definitely. So we've done an LCA of our cradle to gate. So essentially looking at our carbon footprint as an organization, and the biggest footprint is definitely on the agronomy side in terms of fertilizer usage. And like you said, fuel for any of the equipment, but that's inherent to like all agricultural production. We definitely can find and continue to optimize those things. Finding partners that are closer by to reduce those footprints. But we're aware of that. But like fertilizer is a great example. We don't have a lot of control over that, but finding the varieties that can work, reduce fertilizer needs, that has an overall impact in our carbon footprint. When it comes to the facility, it is energy intensive in terms of what our electrical usage is. Air handling is probably our biggest motors and electrical users. We do have, it is a mechanical process to separate the bast and hurd from one another. Grain is not as bad. I would say the air handling equipment associated with cleaning the seeds, probably where we see the biggest need, and then probably our mechanical presses after that. So, what about using industrial hemp for cleaning the soil and air? So I can't speak to it in any detail. Generally, though, we because we know hemp is so good at sequestering carbon, and its plant cycle, that we know photosynthesis does some great things. And because of how quickly it can grow and just vigorous of a plant it is, I definitely think it's doing something there. So I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think anything that we can plant and see and then reutilize for other opportunities is awesome as well. Ongoing research in New York or the U.S. related to rehabilitation of brownfields. Great question. My dad actually got us into hemp. He's a geologist and environmentalist background, did a lot of work on brownfield sites. And so he got interested in hemp because of its ability to phytoremediate the soil. We have been engaged with some studies. We did work with Idaho University, looking at lead uptake with plants. We definitely see that hemp does some great things. It's interesting to see where those heavy metals, even hydrocarbons and radionucleotides sort of end up in the plant. It does do a good job of protecting, its DNA from the seed. So a lot of those compounds, we don't find them in the seed themselves, but you'll find residual in the stock material. I know Pennsylvania is really interested. They've been looking at hemp to, work with some recovered, coal mines or other things where we have soil issues. So we're working with an oil company. There's an oil field, an old abandoned oil refinery in Northeast Montana that we've been working on for almost a decade, and trying to work with them and incorporating hemp as part of our rehabilitation and remediation plan. So another awesome thing about hemp that we hope to see grow in the future. I think that's it. Hopefully I covered it all. And you guys have my email if I've missed anything, but feel free to reach out. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak on here, and hopefully I did an okay job.
Yes. Thank you, Morgan. It was an amazing talk, and thank you for answering all of our questions too. I feel like we learned a lot today. We have recorded the webinar and we will be uploading it to our School of Integrative Plant Science YouTube channel. So if you want to watch it again, if you missed some part, please go over there and we will upload it in the coming days. For our next webinar, which is going to be on February 12th, we are going to have Nicole Butcher, and she's going to talk about plant pathogens in hemp. So also thank you everyone for connecting today, and we will see you on February 12th. Goodbye. Have a nice rest of your day.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.